Welcome to Mr. Joe's exclusive stories, where every story is more than words. It's a journey into the heart. Tonight's story is one that will stay with you long after it ends. It begins with a quiet evening, but what unfolds will remind us how a single moment can change everything. Stay with me, because this is more than just a story. It's a reflection of love, loss, and the hidden weight we all carry. It was just another quiet evening when my husband clicked play on that video. An ordinary moment that split our lives into before and after. The living room was wrapped in the kind of silence that belongs only to late evenings, when the world outside has already folded into sleep and the inside of a home feels like a cocoon. The lamp on the side table cast a soft, honey-colored glow across the carpet, catching the edges of the mug he had set down, steam still curling faintly from the tea. I remember the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, steady and low, and the faint ticking of the wall clock as it moved minute by minute into the night. It was one of those evenings that should have been unremarkable, forgettable even, one that blends into the quiet rhythm of married life. He sat on the couch, legs stretched out, socks mismatched as always, one gray, one navy. I had teased him about it earlier, laughing at his insistence that it was efficient to grab whatever pair came first from the drawer. That was the kind of man he was, practical, unbothered, leaning toward the simple comforts of life. He had worked a long week, the sort that drained him without ceremony. I could see it in his shoulders, the way they slumped forward, and in the absent-minded way he scrolled through his phone, thumb flicking up the screen with a rhythm that was almost hypnotic. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just something. Something light, something mindless, something to close the door on the day with. I remember thinking how ordinary it all was. How safe. How familiar. And then, the video appeared. It started the way so many viral things do, with a misleading thumbnail that gave no hint of the weight inside. I leaned closer, curious, as he tapped it almost without thought. The sound came low at first, a muffled echo of voices, grainy, unclear. But within seconds the images sharpened, and what filled the screen was not lighthearted. It was raw, unfiltered suffering, footage that should never have been captured, much less shared, yet it spread like wildfire across the digital veins of the world. I saw the shift in him almost immediately. First came confusion, a small furrow in his brow, the kind you see when someone squints against sunlight. Then came shock, a tightening around the mouth, his jaw stiffening as though to hold something in. And then the silence. It wasn't the silence of distraction or thought. It was heavy, weighted, pressing itself into the walls of the room until even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to vanish beneath it. I felt it against my skin, thick and unyielding. My husband didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stared at the screen, eyes fixed, body unnervingly still, as if every ounce of him had been tethered to those flashing images. I watched his hands. They had always been strong, steady hands, the kind that fixed leaky faucets and held mine firmly when crossing a crowded street. That night, they lay limp on his lap, palms turned up as though asking for something unseen. His chest rose and fell slowly, but there was a strain in the rhythm, a pause just long enough to make me hold my own breath. I wanted to reach out, to take the phone away, to tell him to stop watching, but I couldn't. Some instinct held me back, the sense that he wasn't just watching but absorbing, taking in something that would refuse to leave once inside. It was as though if I touched him, I might break something fragile in the air between us, something I could not fix. And so I sat beside him, my heart thudding with a kind of dread that didn't make sense, not yet. I told myself it was just a video, just another ugly corner of the internet that would fade from memory with time. But in the way his shoulders stiffened, in the glassiness of his eyes, I knew. This wasn't something that would fade. Seconds stretched into minutes, but it felt like hours. The glow of the screen painted his face in shifting tones, sometimes harsh white, sometimes shadowed, always unnatural. It was like watching a veil lower over him, piece by piece, until the man I knew seemed to blur into someone else. And then it ended. The video cut off abruptly, leaving only the blank screen and the faint reflection of his own face staring back. He didn't move. He didn't look at me. He just sat, frozen, as if part of him was still trapped inside that footage, unable, or unwilling, to return. I whispered his name, softly, afraid to break the silence. He blinked, once, slowly, but said nothing. In that moment, I realized something had shifted. The air felt different. The man beside me, though his body was still here, was already partly gone. The minutes after were the longest I've ever known. He set the phone down, carefully, almost reverently, as if it held something sacred. His hands lingered on it, fingers grazing the edges, reluctant to let go. And then he leaned back into the couch, eyes fixed on nothing, breathing shallow. I waited for him to speak, to make a joke, to brush it off, to ask if I'd seen something like that before. But the words never came. His tongue, once quick with stories and observations, seemed to have turned to stone. I studied his face. I knew every crease, every line, the way his dimples showed when he smiled, the way his forehead wrinkled when he was trying to concentrate. That night his face was a mask, unreadable, and in that unreadability, I felt my chest tighten with fear. I reached for his hand. It was cold. He didn't pull away, but he didn't squeeze back either. He just let it rest there, lifeless, as though the small act of connection was too heavy to return. I thought back to who he was before this moment. The man who could laugh so loudly the neighbors teased us about it. The man who hummed tunelessly while brushing his teeth. The man who always asked if I wanted the last cookie, even though we both knew he hoped I'd say yes. That man felt impossibly distant now, as though swallowed whole by the pixels of a cruel video. I wondered what he was seeing behind those blank eyes. Was he replaying the images? Was he trapped in them, unable to look away even though the screen had gone dark? I wanted to ask, but something told me the words would shatter him. So I stayed quiet, listening to the silence between us. It was not the peaceful kind of silence that couples share after years together. It was jagged, sharp, each second stretching like a thin wire threatening to snap. The clock ticked on. The refrigerator hummed again. Outside, a car passed, its headlights sweeping briefly across the curtains. The world was moving, but inside our living room, time had stopped. I thought about how fragile moments are. 1 second, we had been wrapped in the cozy ordinariness of an evening. The next, everything had changed. And yet, all of it had happened within the same walls, beneath the same lamp, on the same couch. Nothing around us looked different. And still, everything felt altered. I wondered, too, what this said about us, about me. I was his wife, the person closest to him, yet I sat beside him unable to pull him back, unable to bridge the widening distance between us. I thought of all the vows we'd made, the promises to walk together through every storm. But this wasn't a storm. It was a silence, a fracture, a slow sinking. How do you fight something you cannot see, cannot touch? I wanted to tell him that he wasn't alone, that whatever horror he'd seen didn't need to live inside him. But when I opened my mouth, no words came. They felt too small, too fragile, against the enormity of his stillness. And yet I stayed. That was all I could do. I stayed beside him, my hand on his, my heart stretched thin between fear and love. Because sometimes love is not about fixing or speaking or even understanding. Sometimes it is about sitting quietly beside someone as they break, hoping that your presence alone can keep the pieces from scattering too far. The glow of the lamp dimmed as the bulb buzzed faintly, its light flickering in tired intervals. The tea had gone cold. The clock ticked on, and there we were, trapped in that moment that felt like it would never end. And maybe, in some ways, it never did. Because even now, even as I write this, I can still see him sitting there, the silence pressing in, the weight of a video that stole something from him. It cracked the lens through which he saw the world. And though time has dulled the edges of his pain, though days and months have passed, I know deep down, he has never truly been the same. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. At Mr. Joe's Exclusive Stories, we share life-changing narratives that remind us of the power of empathy, resilience, and human connection. Subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and join our growing community of story lovers. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Because sometimes, one story is all it takes to spark understanding and hope.